Welcome to an Outside View. I'm your host, Dick Zaccaro, and joining me today is Chief John Carmichael of the Walpole Police Department. Chief, welcome back.
Thank you for having me. This is my second time, so
Yeah,
it's quite a privilege.
We really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
How's things going nowadays?
2020 continues to give. I think it's been a tough year for us.
Yeah, all around. I mean, you've had your challenges.
Certainly have some new challenges that, as as a police officer who's been around for 30 years, most of my life as a police officer, I haven't really seen much like what we're seeing today. So, in policing, it's all about adapting to whatever's kind of being thrown at you. So, it's definitely been a tough year for us, but we get through it.
Right. How's the morale holding up with your officers?
Great question. The morale, it's believe it or not, it's very good. Even with the circumstances, I think that we're facing, I think a lot of that just comes from the recruitment of the officers that we have, the quality that they are, and their background and everything. But it has been a tough year, just with the whole issue with the COVID and the pandemic coming in, and the whole having to be able to adapt and change our approach on policing through the entire pandemic, and different changes, and then with a lot of the anti-police sentiment that we've been seeing going across the country, that certainly has a trickle-down effect. Even though Massachusetts and Walpole in particular are not involved in those particular incidents, they certainly have an impact on us, and that's translated into our state. And so a lot of different things that we've had to kind of address and adjust to make sure that the officers do maintain their morale, and that they can continue to focus on the job and the great job that they do every day.
And I want to personally thank you for the kind note you sent me. The chief sent a note on official police stationery thanking me for my participation in the police rally we had, Appreciation Day, back in July. And how do your staff feel about that?
They were very happy to do that. And that was right in the time when we have a lot of young police officers on the department, and it's very difficult, I think, for them to grasp, the people who don't believe or support the police. So, some of these guys have just gotten out of the academy recently, and they come on this job most of the time to want to help people and to help their community and give back to the community. And when you see situations that happen in other states and other parts of the country that impact us here, it's tough for them to understand that. So there's a lot of the leaders within the department helping and guiding the officers through that, so that they don't turn that negativity into the job and translate that into how they're doing their job on the street. So there's been a lot of that, but they've been very good in getting through these two big incidents, or two big types of things that are affecting policing right now over the past 6 or 8 months.
All right. Well, the community certainly came out and supported you. We had about 400 to 500 people. We had some news stations down there.
Yep.
And it was an honor and a privilege to do that for you. My hat's off to you people. You got a tough job, and every day you put your lives on the line, literally, to protect the citizens, the men and women in blue.
Yeah. And we do certainly appreciate that. With community policing, the Walpole Police Department, we do embrace the 21st century policing. 21st century policing goes back about 6 years under President Obama, but there's a lot of recommendations, good recommendations that were in that police departments across the country hopefully adopted and made as part of their mission. And we did do that. And when we see people in Walpole come out like they did that day and support their police during a difficult time, that really meant a lot, because if you go back to Sir Robert Peel, right, and the police are the community and the community are the police, it takes a community to deal with all the issues that we deal with. It's not just up to the 45 police officers of the Walpole Police Department. We have to work together to solve problems. And when you look at situations like that have happened across the country, and in particular, I'll bring up George Floyd. That incident there, I was one of the first police chiefs in Massachusetts to denounce the behavior of those officers because, you know, I, like others, can look at that video and make certain judgments on that. And I don't typically do that. Usually when situations happen across the country in policing, police chiefs in particular won't say much because we really don't know all the facts and the circumstances on every case like we do with things that may happen in our own community. So we don't typically do that. But in that case, I felt obligated to do it because just because it was so egregious, I think, and it was in front of our faces. So I thought it was important for me to comment on it and hopefully have our community come together and understand what our department does here. You know, we've embraced 21st century policing years ago, and what that has done is that our policies and our procedures, you know, the way that we train on you know, procedural justice, fair and impartial policing, we've employed all that. We've been doing it for years, and it's frustrating as a police officer or even a police chief to see in other parts of the country where they haven't done that. And that's kind of the punch in the gut, I guess, that when a situation happens in policing thousands of miles away is no different than if it happened right here in Walpole. And sometimes that's how people make that connection, and they paint policing with a very broad brush when policing really varies across the country as far as, you know, how things are handled and what philosophy they work under. And you know, our philosophy here has been community policing, grassroots, engage in the community, face-to-face contact. And over the years, you know, going back to when I was a deputy chief, I look for police officers that have that understand the community policing philosophy, that can exhibit respect and compassion for people that they deal with. And that's really what it's all about. And, you know, making sure that, you know, every year I go before committees and I ask for money for training, and it's making sure that your police officers are very well trained and disciplined, and that they're the right fit for the community. And, you know, that's what we've really strived to do. And I think we're very, very fortunate to have the caliber of police officers that we have here in Walpole. I don't think, you know, I work with them every day. I don't think the average person really understands how exemplary each of these young men and women are. It's, I'm really honored to work with them.
Well, you have a great reputation, and not only as the department of being the head of that department, as a chief. In my travels, when I meet a lot of other law enforcement officials, my next show I'll have the sheriff of Norfolk County on, but they all hold you in very high regard.
Thank you.
Speaking of the Floyd incident, I just read today the police officer that is charged with that was released on a $1 million bail today.
Wow.
So it'll be interesting to
$1 million.
see what happens. $1 million.
And he made bail?
Yeah, he made bail. I don't know
Wow.
who paid for it, but
Wow.
he made it.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about my last show. I advertised as a citizen police survey out there, and we've got some great responses. You want to share with the viewers some of the questions on it, some of the feedback you've been getting?
Yeah, so about 5 years ago, we did our first citizen survey, and we did that one through the census. We were doing a census at the time, and so we got the permission to put our census in with, our survey in with the census, which was mailed out to all homes in Walpole. And we had hoped to get a few hundred back, but we ended up getting about 3,000 responses back from the homes in Walpole. And so we took that survey and all of the information and kind of extrapolated it all out, and then we took what the community was asking for, and we started to tailor the department towards those needs. So community policing philosophy always allows citizen input, setting the agenda. Like, you know, we work for the community, so the community has to have input in how we police the town. So we took a lot of that to heart, and a lot of it, when I look back at that survey, was all community policing. They wanted to see the police department engage the community more, face-to-face contact, especially with certain groups like seniors and our youth. And so then we developed all these different programs like positive tickets, and you know, we have basketball cop and hockey cop, and the different things that we do in the community programs that provide us the opportunity to have that face-to-face contact with people. And it's been very, very successful to the point where the Walpole Police Department has been recognized nationally by the DOJ on the community policing websites. We've received awards for our community policing activity, and even with our school resource officer and school resource dog, we've received awards and accolades there. And we don't look at that as, hey, the Walpole Police Department, rah, rah, rah. We look at it as it's a community effort. It's because we can't do it alone. It's community policing is us and the community. So we look at those awards as Walpole, the town of Walpole, the community of Walpole being recognized. And so after this 5 years, we felt because of all of the issues that are going on in policing right now, and a lot of confusion for most people that may or may not understand like what is going on in policing in the United States right now, it was a good time to get out another survey. And so we did that, and we created internally a new survey. And that survey does include a lot of 21st century policing stuff. If you look at it, it does have questions in there about, do you feel that the Walpole Police Department practices fair and impartial policing, and that we recognize procedural justice, and questions like that are very focused on these particular issues. And in addition to that, we also have the crime and fear of crime type of questions, which, for a senior citizen or something, when we talk about fear of crime, there's certain groups of people that have a higher fear of crime than others. For example, our senior citizens, they, let's just say fraud and that type of thing. They're targeted for that, and so they may have a higher fear of crime than the average citizen might, or a victim of a crime may have a different view of it as well. So we want to get like a gauge of that so that we can put our resources to where people want it and need it. Now we did get some criticism on how we created the document. We've addressed that. We believe that first of all, we're cops, so we're not survey analysts, and we're not at a university somewhere doing some scientific study. We're police officers in a community that are trying to get information from our residents and helping set our agenda and tailoring our agenda to what the community wants. So we think that we're going to get very good information out of it, and be able to apply that in our mission and what we do every day. We don't think that it's going to be perfect, but it's still going to give us enough information, I think, to make some changes if changes need to be necessary and that kind of thing.
And how many responses do you typically get? Did a lot of the community take part in that?
Well, so far, I mean, it's been a little slow. We're closing in on 600, I think, responses back. And like I said, on that first survey we did, we got 3,000 back. I would love to get that, because that's a good survey sample to develop it from. Some of it might be because some people may not believe that the survey is valid enough because of some of the way the questions are formulated. But again, we don't think so. We've looked at it, and we think that if citizens spend the time, it takes about 10 minutes to do it, to fill out that survey and submit it, that we'll be able to make some good judgment calls as to what people really want from us.
Excellent. Well, we'll continue to promote it too on the show.
Thank you.
Now, how about with all the problems going on across the country, have you seen an increase in gun permits, applications? I'm
Yes.
sure you have, right?
Significantly. Usually when, on a typical time, we gauge all that. We know how many we do every year. And looking at during COVID, since COVID started to this point, like even today, our license to carry applications increased 3 times of what we would normally do in that same time period. And it's a little bit concerning. It's worrisome mostly because when people submit their letter with the application, there's a lot of uncertainty, I think, in people's letters and what they're trying to convey in their application. Where they're worried, they're a little bit concerned and worried about where the country's going, and they're worried about their safety and even be able to protect themselves. So it's tough when you have to read some of these letters when they come in. But we discuss it, when people come in to actually do their interview, we discuss those things. And there's definitely a shift, I think, in and what's happening.
You talk a little bit about the process, what you have to do, and the differential. I know there's like a hunting license, and then there's gun permits, and then a license to carry. Maybe
Yep,
you can
sure.
inform
Well,
the viewers of what you have to
yeah.
do and the differential between
Sure, yeah.
the
Well,
different
first of
licenses.
all, obviously having a firearms is a Second Amendment right under the Constitution, right? But in Massachusetts, you see a lot of stuff going on around the country with, the different laws, right? So, Florida is much different than how Massachusetts does it. Red flag laws, or some of those things they might refer to them as. Here in Massachusetts, basically, when somebody applies for a license to carry, that is the ability to carry any handgun, large capacity handguns, as well as rifles and shotguns, and the ammunition that goes with it. That's like a Class A license to carry firearms. And basically what we do is they submit the application, and then we do a background check. And in Massachusetts, it's much more comprehensive than, say, in New Hampshire, where it's, I think, a must-issue state. Here in Massachusetts, we look at criminal background. There are like statutory disqualifications where if somebody committed a crime that's more than 2.5 years in the House of Correction or in prison, that person would be ineligible to get a license to carry. And so there's certain crimes that would disqualify somebody. If they don't have those crimes, if they've never committed or been convicted of those crimes, then we issue the permit based on the law. Department of Mental Health does come into play. We do a Department of Mental Health check and Board of Probation and III, which is the criminal record check. And then there's other issues of suitability where the police chief, being the licensed authority, has to make a determination based on, maybe there's a lot of issues with domestic violence, but there was no conviction. You'd have to look at that and make kind of a judgment call without being arbitrary and capricious, whether or not that person qualifies to have it.
So there's a psychological evaluation as well.
There is, and the psychological evaluation is only if somebody's ever been committed to a Department of Mental Health facility, and a lot of times, even if somebody has, let's face it, right? There's a lot of mental health issues out there, and sometimes people need treatment and they need help, and there's a very good reason why they sought help. So you have to take that into consideration, and if it's something where they were committed, what we usually do is have them just have their doctor submit something to us that says that they did seek treatment and that they're okay and they're perfectly capable of having a firearm.
And when you do get a license to carry, it's got to be concealed, obviously, right?
Actually, so in Massachusetts, that's a good question, because a lot of people ask that. Massachusetts law is mute on whether or not we're open carry or concealed carry. It doesn't actually talk about it. So technically, you could do either.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you could walk into an establishment with the gun on your side?
You technically could, yeah. Well, you see a police officer, a detective, they usually have their gun, like, on their belt or something. But
you would expect that, but I mean, if you walked into an establishment, you saw some people there.
Yeah, I know. I think it would probably, because a lot of states are open carry. You got in certain parts of the country, they just have a gun hanging from their belt or whatever. But here in Massachusetts, the law doesn't actually state it either way. No, obviously, I don't think it's a good idea to walk around open carry. In fact, some places like Walmart have a policy that you can't. So if you did go in there, they would ask you to leave, or they'd probably call us.
I know our president is a strong believer in the Second Amendment, and I see most of the police unions across the country are backing our president. Probably that's one of the reasons. It's very important.
Yeah. That's always, being a chief and being part of Mass Chiefs of Police Association. Obviously, there's laws. Typical a police chief should be apolitical, and they don't get involved in politics per se. But Mass Chiefs has had these discussions, very heated discussions on whether or not should the organization endorse candidates and that kind of thing, and it always turns into this huge
sure
debate.
There's a lot of debates, but usually union heads kind of set the tone.
They
on
do,
that, right?
The unions usually jump right into it.
Same with my son. He's in the building trades. He's a carpenter. and they try to influence some of their membership who they should be supporting.
Yeah.
But there's varying degrees now.
Sure.
A lot of them don't want to do it anymore. But
Yeah.
now, how about training for your police officers now? I'm sure they have to go through various stages.
Yep.
They continue to get trained, and they go to the firearm ranges, the gun ranges, and
Yep.
there's psychological programs as well. I know that you see a lot of things that the normal person wouldn't see in a lifetime,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that must have a serious impact on a lot of people.
It certainly does. So most of the training that we're receiving right now is all kind of linked to use of force. We've had to change our use of force policies based on some of the things we've seen around the country. For example, sanctity of life and officers intervening on if they observed excessive force, as well as you know, you have this issue of chokeholds and all that stuff. We're not trained on that in Massachusetts. It's not part of the MPTC training protocol. So we don't do it. So it's not in the policy. We did put something in there that prevents officers from involved in anything that involves asphyxia, you know, unless it's obviously a deadly force situation. So we've adapted to all of that. Most of the other training right now that we're getting is in mental health, crisis intervention training, because the mental health calls that we are dealing with here in Walpole have increased 100% every year over the last 3 years. And this year we're probably going to be at or beyond where we were last year. We go on more than 300 mental health crisis calls a year, which is, it's very sad, but there's a lot of people that are struggling and need that help. So our policy is all surrounded on it's alternative to arrest. Like, you know, years ago in this job, many of these mental health situations would turn into an arrest, which we want to completely avoid. We want to be able to de-escalate any type of situation or treat that person and get them help and resources that they need. So our approach there has completely changed. And so I've made a goal of training the entire department on mental health first aid, as well as crisis intervention training, which is a week long. It's a 40-hour training, and I have almost I have more than half the department trained in that stuff right now. We're working towards the goal of getting everybody in, but it's you know, it's expensive. There's a cost to it, and so we work through that in our training budget. And then for the psychological part, we debrief a lot. So, you know, people think sometimes that, you know, oh, well, Walpole's quiet, not a lot happens. That's true. Like, we have a very safe community. We're in a safe county and a safe state. So, overall, but you know, things do still happen. We deal with a lot of disturbing and sensitive, delicate, tragic situations all the time. And you know, what we have to really be careful with our officers is that we debrief on things. Like, so when, you know, there's a tragic situation occurs and they respond to it, that we talk about it afterwards. And if the officer needs help, we send them to a crisis intervention within the police department and within Metrolec, and to make sure that they're okay with it. Because, and it's not always just a one situation, one tragic event that happens. It's the cumulative effect of things that you see and you observe over years and years, and call after call after call,
Right.
which is what really affects people. And when I referenced 21st century policing earlier, one of the tenets, one of the pillars of 21st century policing is officer wellness. And so it's very important that officers are debriefed, and that you do pay attention to how they feel about situations and things that are affecting them. So there's a lot. Like, it's a very stressful job, policing.
Absolutely.
You know,
I can imagine.
And you know, with some of the stuff going on right now, it's making it even more difficult for them. But you know, it's a constant struggle, this job, and you have to make sure that the officers are working through it constantly. When we hire them, when we interview police officer candidates, one of the first questions I always ask them is, how do you release stress? And it kind of throws them off a little bit, but you know, they have to have some outlet. You know, the policing takes up a lot of your life, so they have to have some outlet out there, whether it's, you know, fishing, canoeing, going to the beach, going to the mountains, exercise, biking, whatever it might be. I want to make sure that officer has some outlet. They're involved in something that can help them deal with some of the stress that they deal with in policing.
Right. How about opiate addiction? That's a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
I know the governor has been addressing that
Yep.
during his tenure, and
Yeah.
that's a serious problem. I mean, you have a lot of homeless out there now, and as you say, some people that are not mentally stable, they close a lot of the mental facilities that
Mhm.
they have out there.
Yeah. So I think you said you had Sheriff McDermott coming in.
Yeah, I was reading his background.
Who's done a phenomenal job at the jail with dealing with the opioid epidemic. You know, a lot of them, he'll probably mention this, that a lot of them are dual diagnosed, right? They have mental health issues, they have substance abuse disorder, and so that's what's continuously adding to their problems and how they're ending up in jail. But I've had the opportunity to be on 2 different governors' opioid task forces, as well as the Interagency Council on Substance Abuse and Mental Health, as actually the law enforcement representative. And so I've been very entrenched kind of in that issue. And, you know, here in Walpole, we've been tracking our overdoses since 2011. And we've had over 200, like 30, 240 overdoses, and we've had 35 to 40, I think we're at 40 now, fatalities. So we've lost 40 people just on the town of Walpole.
Wow.
Since 2011 due to drug overdose and substance abuse. And so it's a significant problem. And again, you know, coming on as a young police officer back in the day, the response to it was to arrest people and put them in jail. And we've kind of transitioned away from that to engage in people that have substance use disorder and getting them help and resources to treatment. Our officers have literally driven people to treatment centers on their own time and everything just to get them some help, and it's been huge. And then, you know, the addition of naloxone and officers carrying the naloxone has been a huge impact because we've used it over 100 times for people suffering from substance use disorder, and we look at that as those are lives that, you know, our police officers, our firefighters, and even bystanders have saved people's lives in our community. And you know, it's slowed down a little bit, but we're still definitely not away from that problem yet.
Now, do you have programs with, let's say, the community, particularly in the schools? I know I'm from Brockton originally, and they had a program called DARE, a drug awareness program.
Yep.
And then they had some programs with repeat offenders Scared Straight, where they
Yeah.
actually take them into a
Yeah.
prison and show them what
Yeah.
it's like. What do you do in the
We
community?
do. We still do
reach-
that.
Do you?
We still do that. We do it with our junior police academy. We don't call it Scared Straight anymore. There's different terms for it, but we do those programs. The DARE program is very near and dear to my heart because that's where my focus on substance use issues started. I was a DARE officer here in Walpole for 9 years in the 5th grade, and we taught in the 5th grade. And the DARE program has actually taken a lot of heat. You know, people said it didn't work and all that stuff, but if you actually look at the statistics from when the DARE program started to when those kids who got that training in the 5th grade actually reached seniors in high school, those use rates and everything started to dip right before they kind of pulled the plug on the funding. So if they had let it go for more years, it would have been interesting to actually see what the impact of it would have been. But certainly the biggest problem with the DARE program was that it was taught in 5th grade. And then there was no follow-up to that in the ongoing years. So it'd be like teaching a student math in 5th grade and then giving them a math test in 10th grade and saying, hey, try and figure this out, but you didn't have any math training in between. So that's part of why it went south. But the relationships, again, the community policing aspect of that and that face-to-face contact with kids in the community was priceless, because I have police officers now on the police department that I had in the 5th grade as their DARE officer, and
Wow.
you know, and they remember that. So I've been in different locations where, you know, you bump into a kid who's all grown up now, and they say, hey, Officer Carmichael, you were my DARE officer, you know, and you know, that made it all worth it, you know, regardless of how the program worked overall. That goes a long way, I think.
Right. Well, we have about 5 minutes left. Let's talk about the new additions you had to the department. You had a change in command. You promoted some
Yeah.
people. We went to a town hall and saw the ceremony, which was very nice.
Yeah, yeah.
And how they working out?
They're working out great. The department, so my goal over the past 5 years has been to diversify the department. We want to be representative of the Massachusetts community and everything, and so we have a very well-educated, very compassionate people. We have very committed officers and everything on the department. And I'm very proud of them. I mean, it really is an honor to work with them and see what they do every day from my perspective. And diversifying the department was very important. So, we have 5 female officers now, and we have African American officers, and
yeah.
we have Middle Eastern officers, and we have officers that speak 3 languages, and there's all these, they have all of these special gifts and everything, and it's really great to see the department kind of take off that way. And we've also made some very significant promotions. Rich Kelleher being promoted to deputy chief, and most recently we had John White, who was promoted to lieutenant. And when he was promoted to lieutenant, we created another kind of component of the department under community services, where he oversees all of our community policing services, which is a big component of the department. And then, the rest of the command staff, Joe Zangetti, he's a lieutenant in charge of the administrative kind of component of the department, and Rob Kilroy, another lieutenant who's in charge of our patrol division. And then so the deputy chief actually oversees our detectives, investigations, and then, I'm kind of just at the top, and everything kind of flows. But it's, believe it or not, if you look at our organizational chart, the police departments they're very complex organizations. There's a lot going on. Like,
Sure.
I think most people might think that, that's
Right.
policing. They respond to calls, and there's so many more things that we do that the average person doesn't realize. So when you look at our organizational chart, it's pretty impressive to see everything that they actually do.
And you like the new station?
I love the new
Beautiful.
station. Yeah. I every day I go in there and I still can't. I actually pinch myself. I can't believe it, because I worked in the old station for a long time, and while we had a lot of great times and laughs and everything in that building, there really was that kind of you show up to work every day, and the toilets were overflowing, or
Right.
it was the leaks were coming down through the roof and everything, and it was
to
tough.
learn all
It was
the
a tough
trades.
environment, but
Plumbing trades.
yeah, and you really didn't realize it. Somehow we just accepted it. We worked through it. Nobody ever complained about it. We just kind of went with it. But now that we're in the new building, and you walk in there every day, and it's just so welcoming, and everything's set up just the way we wanted it. Lieutenant Zangetti, he did a great job helping us kind of make sure that everything kind of flows like when you go through there now compared to the old building, and it helps morale. It helps morale, and you have a nice clean building.
Right.
Steve's down there cleaning it all the time. He does a great job. And
I see you still have some of the flags left that we put up for
We do, yeah.
Appreciation Day out front.
yeah,
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask how's Rebel doing.
she's doing absolutely fine.
Good.
And funny you mentioned
Rebel
that. Right,
is the police dog, by
yeah,
the way.
she's our community resource dog. That was a home run. Like when Officer Hart, first kind of integrated in there and kind of engaged Golden Opportunities for Independence right here in Walpole. And he coming in and they got this dog. Like, we think this dog might be able to help with our community policing. We're just like, what? And we kind of just, it was almost like a pilot. We just kind of like, all right, well, let's just try this. And it is unbelievable what Tommy and Rebel have been able to do in this community. And I've seen it like firsthand when we're at some tragic situation, and we bring Tommy and Rebel in, and there's a child there that's really suffering probably the worst day of their life, and how that child interacts with Tommy and the dog, and how they can kind of forget about this awful situation that just happened. And I've seen it over and over and over again. And helping kids go to school that don't want to go to school, and just helping kids with their social and emotional learning. at school. Like it's just been incredible the impact that they've had. And then it spread. Like all of the district attorney, Mike Morrissey, ended up giving grants out to departments across Norfolk County, basically adopting what we've done here in Walpole. And now you see community resource dogs being used all over Norfolk County, and it's starting to kind of even spread across the state. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, like right now the Walpole Police Department is the third. We're within 3 police departments in the country to be recognized by the Attorney General Barr's office for his Distinguished Service Award.
Excellent.
And yeah, so we're going to find out pretty soon. We know that we're down to the last 3 departments from the entire country. So based on what we do as far as community policing and the use of our community resource dog. And just that alone is quite a accolade, I think. And you know, again, Tommy's commitment and Rebel's impact has just been phenomenal.
Terrific. Well, in closing, maybe you could tell the viewers if they're interested in becoming a police officer, what they should do, and maybe if you'd like to say anything in closing to the viewers out there.
Sure. Well, you know, first of all, if you want to become a police officer, Walpole got out of civil service several years ago, and so we now have our own exam, which we give every 2 years. We actually do it right here at Walpole High School. And what we've seen across the state is that there's a downturn in police officer candidates. You know, who want, you know, some kids are like, why do I want to come on this job right now with everything going on? Oh, I've seen the news, like I don't know if I want to get involved in that. But Walpole, we haven't lost our numbers yet. Our numbers actually increased again last year when we had our last test. So we offer our own exam. People take that exam, and then we establish a eligible list, and then we basically hire off that list. So when there's an opening, we go down a certain amount, and then we bring them in for interviews, and you know, there's a whole process, background checks and all that kind of stuff, until the point where they're actually selected and appointed by the Board of Selectmen, and then off to the academy. 6 months in the police academy.
So any hope for a 67-year-old guy?
Yeah, you can come in. Yeah, I'd love to have you.
I'm a little too old for that, but I want to thank you coming on the show, Chief, and keep up the good work. And I know Walpole is a much better and safer place with you at the helm in the police department.
Thank you.
So
and again, I just want to thank you again for helping us, you know, and coming out and
anytime.
supporting
It was
us,
our pleasure.
and you know, letting those young officers know that the community is behind them and they support them in what they're doing. And it's very important. And I can't say enough about it. It does help them, you know, deal with some of the things that they're
We're
seeing.
behind you 110%.
Yeah.
On my lawn, right across the street from the police station, I have a thank you police officers with the Trump sign right behind there.
Yeah, thank you.
So thanks again. Stay safe, Chief, and
Yeah, you too.
looking forward. I'll have you on again soon.
Love to.
Thank you.
Thanks.